الله بالخير. أدى التطور التكنولوجي السريع والمتنامي في القطاع العسكري إلى ظهور طفرة تدريجية في أسلوب شن الحروب، مستقبل يحمل وجه الحاضر بالفعل، المنطقة الرمادية في الحروب المعاصرة، مستند للورينزو ماريا باتشيني يحدد أطر الهندسة الجديدة في حروب اليوم. هل يشهد العالم اليوم سباقاً لتطوير ونشر تكنولوجيا متعددة المجالات ترسم معالم حقبة جديدة في الحرب الحديثة؟ ما هي الحرب الهجينة؟ وما هي التقنيات والتكتيكات التي تستخدمها الجهات الفاعلة الحكومية وغير الحكومية لدعم أهدافها السياسية والعسكرية والأمنية؟ هل يمكننا أن نقول اليوم إن من يتحكم في المنطقة الرمادية في الحرب يسيطر على السردية والعالم؟ أين تقف أوروبا في النظام العالمي المتعدد الأقطاب؟ وماذا عن البحر المتوسط وشعوبه كنموذج في هذا النظام؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر عن الحرب الهجينة مع الكاتب الإيطالي لورينزو ماريا باتشيني، الأستاذ في الفلسفة السياسية في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Lorenzo Maria Pacini, Italian writer and essayist, professor of political philosophy, founder and director of Ideazione, Italian network of the International Eurasia Movement. Lorenzo Maria Pacini, salam and welcome to Al Mayadeen. This is The Proximate Aspect. I'm Zainab Al-Safar. Such a pleasure to have you, Lorenzo.
Alaykum salam. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
It's our pleasure, sir. Well, today we observe a gradual mutation in the way of waging war, giving rise to an imbalance in power topography and forcing to codify new categories within which to insert not only the new types of armaments, but also the way of using them and the strategies and tactics that derive from them. Lorenzo, how can we frame the new geometries in today's wars and why it matters?
It's very important to clarify at first that along the history, a lot has changed the way to do the war. And especially in the last century, we began with a new kind of war system and style. And arriving at the end of last century, the beginning of this one, we introduced in the whole world, but especially in the two main poles, so the United States of America with the Atlantic pole and the Eurasian pole, a new kind of war that is centered no more on the direct attack of the nations between each other, but using new kind of weapons that are called special weapons, and we can divide in info war, cyber war, eco war, bio war, and especially the cognitive war that are included both in what we actually call the hybrid war. So a new kind of symmetries that are made no more only on the classical weapons, using all the dominion of the war, but especially entering inside a kind of deep war that we can catch in our daily lives, creating a condition where we are not feeling the presence of a war, but in fact, we are in a war because the nations are fighting every day in these new symmetries, in these new dominions.
So, Lorenzo, it is no longer conceivable to wage war only in the conventional way, in one way. Today, we identify 5 war domains, which is the earth, the water, the air, the extraterrestrial space, and the infosphere, this 5th domain that remains ambiguous. How can we make a distinction between today's conventional and special operations warfare?
That's a very good question, because actually the point is that it's so complicated to distinguish which is the limit, the border of each dominion. Exactly because with the hybrid war, we are mixing them all together. So we define this, what we call gray zone, but it's gray because it's a color that is not defined enough. It's not white, it's not dark, but it's a color that can let us feel this movement between each dominion. And that's very important because this kind of confusion helps a lot to maintain the status quo of the warfare. It's very important. For example, we have created, we as humans in all the nations, all the defense system, this new mixed and multidisciplinary kind of war, like the informatic and information war, the cyber war, as I said before, the psychological operations that are all linked to the main topic, the main class of the special operations. In the past, special operations were kind of little action determined by specific targets, and usually with a kind of employment of weapons and forces very reduced. But nowadays we can classify as special operations all the operations that are not under the classical warfare as a direct war in the classical dominion.
It seems that this hybrid warfare seems to be the new buzzword, like counterinsurgency or COIN has been before in the connection with Iraq and Afghanistan. What is contemporary hybrid warfare, and how to counter the hybrid threats that dominate the contemporary international security environment?
This is a point very discussed, actually, because the problem is that the hybrid war is not centered only in one style, and it's not simple to be restricted inside a kind of frame that we can fight and destroy. That's the point. Using especially the data, the cyber space, we are entered in a kind of war that is completely diffused. This diffusion makes very difficult also because with the new partnerships and treaties that we have between the nations, as we know, the more famous is the NATO, but also the geo-economical treaties and partnerships makes a new point in this kind of war. We can't know and destroy which is the main leader in this warfare planning. So this means that we produce a kind of military advantage, and catching that, we can find the criterion for attributing the military character and the responsibilities. But it's not simple. For example, using artificial intelligence, that nowadays is very used and diffused in the hybrid war, we don't know, we can't find which is the leader and the starting point of the war. That's very problematic. In such a way, actually, to go against this kind of war, nations are working a lot on cybersecurity, of course, and on counter and open source intelligence. That is made to to do a kind of counter information that is very important, because in this way they can control which is the diffusion of the informations, as because we know that informations are what gives a form to the mind of people. Changing informations, we can change the mindset.
if you
and
have,
also the mindset about warfare.
yes, it's a matter of intel and control of this intel and information. Warfare, so, is no longer focused solely on the destruction of enemy forces. Is the world today witnessing a race to develop and deploy multi-domain technology that defines a new era in modern warfare, Lorenzo?
Yes, the problem, in my opinion, is that which is the control about this development and diffusion, because as we know, depends by the hierarchies that we have between the nations and the kind of dominions. For example, actually, we can't exclude the possibility of a classical warfare. So with the use of the force, using the main dominions like the earth, the sea, the sky. But it's also very probable that the diffusion of the new hybrid warfare will remove in such a time, maybe 10 years, 15 years, the necessity of the classical warfare. And in my opinion, this is very problematic, because it means that we will go deep in a kind of doctrine and redefinition, not only of the comprehension of warfare and the topographies of strategic projection of the world, but also of the ethics that, if we can call it ethics, staying behind the war. As we know, in the past, the war was fighting with a kind of proud
armament
and respect. Yes, in the arguments. Nowadays, we are fighting a kind of war that is literally
unethical,
unethical and absolutely out of control. That's the worst point. Also in the international law, when we try to define and to find the responsibilities of the conflicts, we can't actually know which is the true one, which is the right one. That's problematic, because it means that we have the possibility to go in a kind of war without end and without knowing which is the start and which would be the end.
Right. So in the context of hybrid strategies or non-linear warfare, social and other forms of online media, social media, of course, play a large role in attempts to influence people's perception of current events and topics. What is the role of social data in hybrid warfare strategies? How is social media weaponized today?
So it's very important for the intelligence system using exactly the cyber warfare, the info warfare, to produce information in a part, and in the other one to control the flow of the information. In the production of information, it's very important to the use of the science of powers and propaganda and the cognitive studies about how to manipulate the people and the control of the feedback that we have for the information. So we have the possibility of creating, for example, the panic of a war without having a war. It's not important the truth of the facts of the reality. It's important the feedback in communication. Feedback is what qualifies the communication. And in the control of the counter information, of the free channels, and of also people outbreaking the rules of the great game of information, it's important the censorship and suppression of this kind of enemies that you can find. So all the nations are working since already 40 years. So before the arriving of the mass media, as we know nowadays, using internet in the whole world, very simply in a kind of click, we can connect to the whole world. They are working already to some strategies and methods to modify and control social medias, to block and to give a border, a limit to the kind of freedom that we have. Freedom is the key word of the info war, because more freedom we have, less power we have. Less freedom we have, more power we have.
Sure. Is the gray zone, Lorenzo, a domain of war? Is it a geographic space? What exactly is a gray zone? And how has this concept developed? And is it possible to control the gray zone?
That's the point. Actually, we can't officially define the gray zone as a geographic space. For what we know has geography, so considering the planet Earth, considering the regions and the areas that we have considered in geopolitics and strategical studies until today. But the point is, can we consider the web space? Can we consider the internet a space, a geography, having its own geography? If yes, as we see today, where we are developing not only artificial intelligence, but for example, NFT, and we are creating a reproduction, a copy, mimetic copy of the real world in the internet, as we started with the social medias that are squares, as I said before. So spaces of meeting of people, as we have in the cities. So we are creating, we are giving the possibility of having a digital space that we can't define real, but is actually real because we live inside. It's a kind of intra-dimensional dimension that magmatically touches all the domains and at the same time eludes them. It is real and virtual at the same time. That's the powerful point aspect of the gray zone. And how to control that? We come back to the question of before. The problem is that internet, we consider it as a kind of public free space, but it's not. The data and the internet depends by the device and the software, the platform, the network. And the network of internet, it's not an open source network. It's a military network. That's why many nations like Russia, like China, Iran, are developing their own kind of internet. Who controls the gray zone controls the world. And if we don't understand this now, maybe we will understand this later, too much later. To go against this kind of control, I think it's the most difficult thing, because we live in a world that is strictly connected to the digital world.
Is the idea, the Mackinder doctrine, that by controlling the heartland, the Asian heartland, you can control the world, still valid today, Lorenzo?
Yes, it is in such a way, but not at the same time. Real, because if we maybe come back to a classical warfare, having the control of the Eurasian point of break, that is the region of Khazaria, that is the region of Crimea and Oblast of Kiev, classically known as the heartland, the center of the world, center of Eurasia. Maybe, yes, we can continue to have this classical control, if we can define it classical. In the other way, we can also create a kind of new heartland. That is what many nations are trying to do, improving the digital spaces, and so, in consequence, the digital warfare. If we create a new heartland, digital heartland, like a geographical reality copied in this world, in digital world, controlling them, we can control the whole digital warfare. The point is, which is the digital heartland? Is the room of buttons where you can switch off everything? Is a new topography inside of the software and hardware connections? Is an artificial intelligence? We still don't know that, and that's the worst point.
It always has been he who has manufacturing capacity, raw materials, food, energy, human as well as fossil, and sound money can change the world. Can the new world, Lorenzo, overcome and beat the global spider's web of weaponized dollars?
I think so, and I think this is happening already in such a way.
Right.
At first, because we are living a multipolar change of the world. The trajectories of the past are completely different nowadays, and we see that in the last months. We saw that with the entrance of new partnerships like the SCO, like the BRICS, that are very important. We are unlocking this mystification of a world connected only to dollar. And so applying national values like ruble, like the yuan, like all the national coins, we are literally destroying in a very fast way the control, the economical control and dominion of the United
dollar.
States. Absolutely, yes.
Right.
And so I see that maybe this will require a long time, because we, especially in Europe and all the Western world, we have based 80 years of our economies and political systems on the dollar. So this will means a huge change, but we have to pass through that.
Right. Today, power, as you said, is increasingly and rapidly shifting from the West to the East. Is multipolarity a game changer for Europe? Well, recently you helped and you monitored and you coordinated this conference on multipolarity and Europe. What about Italy, Lorenzo, in particular?
Unluckily, we are having a political situation that concerns a total dependence by the United States of America. This means that we don't have sovereignty and we don't have freedom of decision. As we can see in the last months of our Italian government, multipolarity has been banned by the programs. But the point is that many times the decisions are taken in the history by the peoples, not by the political leaders. So because of Italy is actually a kind of prothesis in the middle of Mediterranean Sea, it's natural for Italy to be a kind of multipolar bridge for the mix and the contact of Europe, of all the Slavic and Balkanian space, of the Middle East and of Africa. And that's very important. Italy, actually, it's not a tellurocracy. It's not a nation that fight and have a dominion in the sea, but it's for 3 parts on 4 introduced in the sea. This means that we have this natural position that is a great position, in my opinion, as it was in the past, when we have the Roman Empire, the Sacred Roman Empire, and we built the Europe that arrived to be at the center of the old world until the arrival of the 20th century. The very true point is to let the people feel and understand the true deep meaning of this eschatological battle and of the meaning of multipolarity. In Italy, this word is entered in the lexic only 2 years ago, just before the beginning of the special military operation between Russia and Ukraine. And that's very strange, because we are talking and studying in Italy about multipolarity since the 90s. So this delay is based on a very, in my opinion, on...
And what is the reaction to this world?
The reaction is certainly coming from the meaning of this delay. That is that we don't have our sovereignty. And after the World War II, we became a kind of colony, not officially, but in fact, of the American power. And so some words and concepts were banned. Now, if you speak to people about multipolarity, they are interested to understand what is, but there is a kind of fear. The fear is, in my opinion, exactly that one. We have to take the responsibility of this change. And this means to work on ourselves and start this changement in the world. Nobody will do it for us. Nobody will do it for Italians, for all the European people, for the whole world.
Of course. Lorenzo Maria Bاتشيني, Italian writer and professor of political philosophy, thank you very much for your insights. Always a pleasure to have you, Lorenzo.
Thank you so much. A big hug to all the friends.
Thank you. Most welcome, sir. من الواضح بحسب الخبراء أن التقنيات الجديدة ولا سيما الذكاء الاصطناعي قيد التطوير والاستخدام العسكري لسنوات عديدة تسمح باتباع نهج أكثر دقة وتنظيما لهذا النوع من الحرب، أي الحرب السيبرانية. لقد أثبت استخدام هذه الأداة أهميته في الحروب المعلوماتية، ولا سيما فيما يتعلق بما يسمى الأخبار المزيفة، سواء تم إنتاجها أو إحباطها، نظرا إلى أن الشبكات العصبية تسمح بتوليد حقائق افتراضية تشبه الواقع الحقيقي وبالتعرف إليها. وإذا ما أردنا أن نستخلص نتيجة مفاهيمية، فمن الضروري توضيح أن العمليات الخاصة ليست من الناحية العقائدية حروبا تقليدية أو حروبا هجينة فحسب، بل هي عبارة عن عمليات عرضية متعددة الأوجه وتتميز بالاستثناءات، والتي يمكن تنفيذها بشكل عرضي فيما يتعلق بالمستويات الاستراتيجية النظرية، ولكن يظل بناء الثقة وإعادة بنائها وتعزيزها أمرا بالغ الأهمية لخلق مرونة دائمة وسدا منيعا في مواجهة تحديات وتهديدات الحرب الهجينة التي تعرض الأمن على مستوى الدولة والمجتمع للخطر الشديد. من كل الميادين سلاما وتحية، في أمان الله.